Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the National Association of Academies of Science Academy Chat today, July 30th, 2025. I'm Amanda Fuller. I'm the past president of the National Association of Academies of Science, and I'm also the executive director of the Kentucky Academy of Science. I love these sessions. It's a great opportunity for our state leaders to come together from the state academies. We have a couple other board members here with us today. And since we don't have too big of a group on yet, I think I would like to start going through and introducing folks before we get to our featured speaker, Jamie Vernon, today. So if folks don't mind, why don't we just do a quick round of introductions? Tell us where you are here from and maybe how you found us today. So Dawn, I'll start with you. Dawn is the president right now of the
Hi everyone.
National Association.
Yes, I'm Donna Girardi. I'm from Washington State, former executive director of WSAS, and I am thrilled you're all here. Thanks for coming. I'll throw it over to Paula Buchanan.
Yes, hi Donna. I am Dr. Paula Buchanan, Sigma Xi member, live in the state in Atlanta, Georgia, and I'm a Sigma Xi member. And I just spent a wonderful quality week with both Jamie and Donna in their policy boot camp, which is how I think I got in the list for this.
Excellent.
Hello, I'm Philip Winchell. I'm the NAAS archivist, and I am calling in from a very steamy Dayton, Ohio.
Hi, I'm Woody Colley. I am an administrative coordinator with the Ohio Academy of Science. I'm sitting in for our executive director, Mike Wojtek, and it is quite steamy here as well. So.
Okay, Rachel, or is that? How about Ali Francoani Jimenez Gonzalez?
Hi everyone. I just new here. I'm just be signant in Sigma Xi, so I'm just getting closer to know much about these things and be more involved in these kind of sessions. I'm totally new. I'm a postdoc from UNAM in Mexico City, so I'm want to know more about this and because I'm new and also in Sigma Xi as a full member, so I want to be involved on what are you doing and everything and collaborate if it's possible.
Great, thank you. Andrew Cooperas.
Yeah, I can go. Hi, I'm a recent finished grad student, currently in state of Georgia, but moving up to Massachusetts soon. And I'm going to be teaching a couple courses. My specialty is astronomy. I'm going to be teaching a couple courses relating to science funding and astronomy and public policy and things in that space. So somehow this got forwarded to me. I don't remember who, but I'm trying to get a little more immersed in this space. So I was just tagging along today to see.
Wonderful.
Great, thank you.
Okay, Rachel, and then Hallie, and then we're off.
Hi, Rachel Owen. I'm one of the program managers for NAAS. Glad to be here.
Kylie Thompson, same program manager with NAAS. Happy to be here. Excited to hear from you, Jamie.
Thank you all. Great to meet you all. We do have a series of these. If you are new and you haven't been part of the Academy Chat series in the past, I would encourage you to check out our schedule online. We have all of our past sessions have been recorded, and there's just so much good stuff there. If there are topics that interest you, public policy is a theme that pops up pretty often in that series. So I would encourage you to check those out. We could put the link in the chat for you. You can also find the schedule there of upcoming sessions. I believe in August, we have not confirmed the date yet, but we're hoping to have a session about Junior Academy of Science. And then in September, we're going to have a session, I think, on community engagement that will highlight the work of Ciencias Puerto Rico. So those will be coming up and will pop up on that schedule soon. yeah, thank you all for joining us, and spread the word to, state leaders in your state academies and other organizations. They're really open and great community building events. So with no further ado, I will introduce Jamie Vernon, who's the CEO of Sigma Xi. Jamie will present and we'll have some time for Q&A after. So if you want to just not lose track of a question, feel free to pop it in the chat, and then we can get to those afterward. Other than that, Jamie, I think I will turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you, Amanda. It's great to see you, and thanks to be with the National Association of Academies of Sciences today and all the leaders from the state academies. This is part of a partnership that's been growing for the last, say, 5 years or so. We signed an MOU a few years ago, and we've been gradually building a closer relationship. And I'm really excited to talk to you today about policymaking, which is an area where Sigma Xi and NAAS are trying to build bridges and find ways, synergies between the two organizations. And I really want to thank those Sigma Xi members who've joined us today. I think I tailored my talk appropriately for some folks who will be learning the early stages of science policy. And then at the end, I'll really come around to a more detailed discussion about their partnership with NAAS. So these are the topics I plan to cover, including this concept of civic science that's emerging now out of the scientific field, defining what civic science is, giving you a little background about myself and my policy pathway, and then some science policy basics and applications of those, and then a vision for the future if that all of you could be a part of. So first, this is an image that I think will haunt us for many years to come. I think that the discussions that have emerged in the first 6 months of the Trump administration were a little troubling for science in terms of a bit of joy that came from cutting budgets. And I think we will, for a long time, be affected by the efforts of DOGE, which was led by Elon Musk. What we're seeing and what we have seen are many headlines from major news outlets, including Science at AAAS, that lays out the challenges that the DOGE cuts pose to science, including creating confusion and worry among the scientific workforce within the federal government, as well as the workforce at the universities. So DOGE has taken a chainsaw, if you will, to federally funded scientific research. 3/4 of US scientists have thought about leaving the US to go to other countries to conduct their research. The EPA even recently announced that it would be making countless cuts to its workforce, and these are all threats to our ability to conduct scientific research and to use that scientific research in federal policymaking. And this is trickling down all the way to local offices, where even a local office in Cheyenne, a USGS office in Cheyenne is likely to close that serve the tribal lands there. And all in all, this is sort of generally summarized as science being under siege. And the question is, what does the public think about this? Well, the public is pretty on board with the idea of DOGE in general. You can see here this survey, which was conducted back in March, says that DOGE is a good idea. And that's because it was presented as an effort to reduce fraud and waste in the government. And generally, I think we can all agree on that. But when science is on the cutting block, we definitely want to think about, why would the public support that? Well, a part of it is what I describe as the ivory tower effect. In some ways, we have walled ourselves off from the public. We have, as a scientific community, have not done a great job of maintaining our relationships with the broader public and making the case for why science is valuable to them. And this is never more evident than in a Research America survey, which tells us that only about 27% of the public can name a living scientist. And when I'm in a classroom setting, I would say, who do you think was at the top of the list for living scientists that were named? When this poll was conducted in 2021, it was Anthony Fauci, who was probably the most prominent scientist in the media at the time. And so the public is obviously responding and identifying scientists through the media. And when you look at who else is on the list, many of these folks are not actually practicing researchers, not scientists at all, and some of whom are no longer alive. So that tells you a lot about who the public views as a scientist and how little they know about who the scientists are around them. Also, when I'm in a classroom, I will say to young scientists in particular, oftentimes your family have been surveyed and they haven't been able to identify living scientists, but it's likely you are that living scientist, and they have not considered you to be a scientist that they would reference in this survey. So it's our responsibility as scientists to communicate what we do and why it's important to society. We're also seeing some concerning survey results in terms of public trust in science. And you can see here in this Pew Research study that particularly among the Republican community and those who lean Republican, we've seen a significant drop in the overall trust in scientists in recent years. It remains relatively steady among Democrats and folks who lean Democrat, but for some variety of reasons, we see some erosion of trust in the Republican community. And further, few Americans now say science has a mostly positive effect on society. 57% say mostly positive in this survey, down from 73% in 2019. So we have to ask ourselves, why is this happening? What can we do to address it? Well, what we do know is that science is having a positive impact on society. People are living longer today than ever before. The cost of energy has fallen in just the last 10 years. Food is historically affordable, if you look back 40, 50 years. And believe it or not, carbon dioxide emissions in the US from energy consumption are falling. All these things are due to scientific innovation and advancement. And so we know the impacts that science is having on society, and the public wants to know those. They say that a strong majority consider it important for scientists to inform the public about their research. So 59% say it's very important. So I guess the question is, who should be doing this? Should everyone be doing it? And how do they do that? How do they communicate their science to the public? Well, too often what we find is that scientists will simply say, we just write about the world. It's up to you guys to go out and save the bloody thing. And that's true. I think oftentimes scientists draw a line between taking action on their research that leads to impacts in society. And so this raises the question of a need for civic science. It's a way of doing science that emphasizes the importance of public engagement, ensuring that all people can be a part of science as well as gaining the benefits of science, and ensuring that there is an evidence-based engagement and open dialogue with the public. So to further define civic science, there's public engagement component that it goes beyond just communicating science. It's actually science outreach, emphasizing co-creation and collaboration between scientists and the public. Also, being more inclusive to ensure that diverse voices and perspectives are heard and are part of the scientific discussion. And beyond that, ensuring that the democratic purposes of science for the public good are emphasized, and that the importance of science is addressed in societal challenges and promoting public well-being. Now, how do we do civic science? One way is through science communication, which I mentioned. We can also do public participatory research that involves the public in data collection, such as citizen science projects. And also, scientists can be more involved in public policy. And so in this case, civic science plays a role in shaping science policy and ensuring that research is used to address societal needs. Now, just to tell you a little bit about why I'm here today, I think, and also why I'm in the current position at Sigma Xi as the executive director. I started out as a bachelor at NC State University, went on to get a master's degree in biotechnology and molecular biology at ECU, and then transferred to University of Texas at Austin, where I got a doctoral degree in cell and molecular biology. This led to a postdoc at the National Cancer Institute in Bethesda, Maryland, and where I was working on an HIV vaccine to cure HIV. Along the way, I often wrote or blogged about the science that I was doing and its relevance to the public. Here you can see an article I wrote for Scientific American about the Berlin patient and how that may or may not be the future of treatments for HIV patients. This led to a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship position at the Department of Energy. Why the Department of Energy as a biologist? Well, I decided that this opportunity would allow me to have an impact on what I think is the most grave threat to humanity, and that's climate change. And so I had the fortune of working in the Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy on a variety of products that were designed to reduce carbon emissions and improve or address climate change. During my time as a fellow, I also requested a small portion of my fellowship to work with the White House at the time, John Holdren and some of his staff at the Office of Science and Technology Policy, to develop a digital communication strategy around climate science. So how do we communicate science to the public? How do we engage the public in a way that makes them appreciate and respond to the needs of climate change in regards to climate change? This led to my current position at Sigma Xi, where this organization with this tremendous history going back to 1886, where we were founded in Cornell University, and growing from a very local organization to an international organization with members like Albert Einstein and Sally Ride. And this picture here on the left is of myself with Greg Fischel, who was my childhood meteorologist. He happened to be a member of Sigma Xi, and so I was happy to bring him into a meeting in North Carolina that we were hosting. And it's just those opportunities that bridge science and the public, because we know meteorologists are among the most trusted scientists in the nation. We also publish American Scientist, which is really a broad facing journal that communicates to the public issues in science. And this is also a vehicle for communicating about the impacts of science on public policy. And so as a scientist with a background in policy, I wanted to really enhance Sigma Xi's role and its influence in science policy. And we've been doing that over the years. Although we're based in North Carolina, I still return often to DC to work with other scientific organizations to lobby Congress or advocate on the Hill and talk about science policies. But being in North Carolina gives us the opportunity, and we're based in Research Triangle Park right here in proximity to the Capitol. We often are able to engage with North Carolina legislators. And one way we directly do that is when we engage with our science policy fellows. So just to share some basic lessons learned, I'll go through these pretty quickly because I think many of you have some familiarity with policy. Generally, I always recommend this book, Beyond Sputnik, U.S. Science Policy in the 21st Century, which one of the authors, Toby Smith, continues to play a major role in developing young scientists in science policy. But basically, the definition of policy is that it's the processes and players involved in government decisions and the factors that influence those decisions and the manner in which those decisions are carried out. But more specifically to this group, science policy is the rules, regulations, methods, practices, and guidelines under which scientific research in the United States is conducted. The importance of scientists in policymaking is also critical. And that's really, I think, the thrust of the AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellowship is to bring these skills, the expertise, the scientific expertise, as well as evidence-based knowledge and critical thinking to policy discussions. And then scientists, their involvement ensures that the decisions are well informed and based on the best available evidence, because that's how we're trained as scientists to function. We also bring a variety of technical skills that many people don't realize are part of the policymaking process. Data analysis and research experimentation are key to how policies are designed. I often say that a policy is a hypothesis. We often think we know how it's going to play out once it reaches, once it's implemented, but we have to track it. We have to understand the impacts, and we have to determine whether or not we're achieving our intended goal. And scientists have the ability to do that. We also have a variety of soft skills, including critical thinking and problem solving, that we develop as we advance through our scientific careers. And communication, although it's usually in a technical format, is also very effective for scientists. However, we often have to train them to speak more generally and be able to communicate very complex topics more effectively. But scientists, one of the things I had to learn as I entered into the policy world was that there's a variety of areas that you need to understand to be able to navigate the process well. For example, we all need to understand the various domains of science policy, the policy cycle, who are the policy players, and the modes of action that I can take as a scientist in policy. And then obviously, we all need to build a network of key stakeholders, decision makers, and relevant institutions in the policy arena. So some of the policy domains really fall into three main areas. So policy for science, which is how to fund or structure the systematic pursuit of knowledge. So these are the policies that define how we do science. Science for policy is the use of science or use of knowledge to assist or improve decision making. And then science-based advocacy usually involves pursuing a particular outcome that serves a group or a cause. Now, the canonical document that defines policy for science in the United States will probably be Science, the Endless Frontier, written in 1945 or published in 1945 by Vannevar Bush. And this document really established the foundation for government support for scientific research, led to the establishment of the National Science Foundation, and ultimately fostered the development of the modern American Research University. This is the document or the regime under which American scientists has operated for 80 years or so. And so right now, what we're experiencing is some challenges or changes to the structure that this document laid out for the US. Other examples of policy for science are how we fund the science. And you can see here the history of science percent of discretionary spending in the US. And many of you are probably familiar with why we had such a dramatic increase in investment in science in the 60s. That's obviously associated with the space race. However, since that period, the funding for science as a percentage of discretionary spending has gradually trickled down. And we're currently in the process of seeing a dramatic decrease in this discretionary spending on science. And beyond just the overall discretionary spending within the federal budget, how that funding is distributed across the various agencies that conduct various types of research is also a policy question. And you can see here that the Department of Health and Human Services is one of the highest funded segments of the federal government. And that's probably because we all understand and appreciate the value of investment in cures for diseases that we all may face. It's a little harder in some cases to make arguments for NASA and NSF funding, which may be slightly removed from the immediate impacts on someone's life. Now, in the opposite direction, science is often used to formulate policy. And we all learned during the COVID crisis that we made some decisions that were probably not the best informed by science policy. We made decisions about whether people had to wear masks, which masks to wear, how far did we need to stand from one another in order to be safe to prevent the transmission of COVID-19. And so over time, scientists were able to develop some data that helped guide those policies, but we didn't always have that science available to us when we needed it. And in many cases, that's part of the reason that the public had some confusion and ultimately pushed back on some of the recommendations, policy recommendations at the time. In North Carolina, we have an organization that's stood up by the state legislature called the Collaboratory. And this organization is specifically designed to address scientific needs of the state. So when we're trying to resolve policies related to North Carolina flooding, resiliency, or the impacts of COVID-19 on student learning, or to address the opioid crisis, we do have funding that's mandated by the state for these purposes. And this is an opportunity for North Carolina scientists to advocate on behalf of certain challenges or on behalf of their research and its use in policymaking within the state. Now, in regards to science-based advocacy, this is more of a trying to achieve a specific outcome. And some of you may be familiar with Dr. Michael Mann, who was the director of the Penn Center for Science, Sustainability, and the Media. His research indicated that carbon emissions from human activities were driving global warming. And he specifically spoke out that we need policies to mitigate the impacts of this phenomenon. So he really leveraged his scientific background to advance policies in this area. He's also the author of The Hockey Stick and the Climate Wars. This is a very popular book for understanding the issues of climate change. Next area that really needs every scientist's attention when it comes to engaging in policy is understanding the policy cycle. We always start any policy discussion with the problem. That problem having been identified through research or through some observation in the public, but identifying that problem is one area of the policy cycle where you can be involved. Next, you have to get that particular problem on the agenda. And when I'm talking about the agenda, I'm talking about the state legislature. Having a representative or an advocate who is interested in developing a policy to address that problem. The next stage of the cycle is developing or formulating the policy based on the problem and what the proposed solutions would be. Subsequently, we have to implement that policy. And once the policy is implemented, we do evaluations to determine whether or not it should be supported or continued, or terminate the policy and develop a new approach to the problem. So understanding this cycle is really important for any scientist interested in going into policy, because each of these areas requires a specific skill set that you may need to develop. Once you've understood the policy cycle, you also need to understand who are the players in the policy process. And these range from policymakers to other government officials to stakeholders and organizations that influence policymaking. And this is a very diverse community. So it can come from the private sector, NGOs, even the intelligence sector can influence policy or inform policy. And then as a scientist, you will want to choose your mode of action. Do you operate as a pure scientist, as a science arbiter, as an issue advocate, or an honest broker? And how do you determine what role you're actually going to play? Well, here's a chart from the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine that helps you understand what role you might play. So if the issue it has a pretty high level of consensus about the problem and likely the solutions with limited uncertainty, then you're probably on the side of a science arbiter or a pure scientist. A pure scientist would choose not to be involved in the policy process at all. However, a science arbiter understands that this science has relevance to policy and would likely play a role in engaging that policy, that science with the policy. On the other side of the chart, if there is a level of uncertainty, a higher level of uncertainty about the issue, and a lack of values consensus, then you may play one of two roles. You can act as an issue advocate, proposing and limiting the scope of choice towards a policy solution, or you can serve as an honest broker who presents all of the science and all of the options and allows the policymaker to make the decisions based on their values and their appreciation for the uncertainty. Once you've decided what role you want to play, then you can choose a variety of options in terms of how to engage in the process. As a pure scientist, you can stick strictly to your research. However, as you choose the other roles as an advocate, a science arbiter, an honest broker, You might choose to write memos or white papers. You may engage in advocacy. You may advise legislators as a science arbiter, for example. You may choose to serve on an advisory committee or a commission, and you may go the next step and actually take a job or a role in the state government, becoming a government employee or a consultant of the government. So let's go back and think about real world examples. I mentioned at the opening that there was a siege on science and that the cuts under the Trump administration likely threaten decades of scientific research. These are very real concerns. We currently have a multifaceted challenge to the research enterprise. We have upended our funding model. Many of you are familiar with the supplemental guidance from NIH that put a cap on facilities administrative spending, and this is going to be have a dramatic impact on the universities that rely heavily on, in many cases, on these F&A expenditures. There's also been an erosion of research infrastructure within the federal government, from the ability to convene review panels and so on. That erosion is going to affect our ability to distribute funding to university researchers. Then there's the undermining of the workforce recruitment and development. We're struggling now to make a strong case for why it's important to maintain DEI programs. Partly because these are viewed as counter to the meritocracy that science should be, but we all know that with reducing numbers of international students coming to the United States, international scientists coming to the United States, we will have to cast the widest net to maintain a scientific workforce. So cutting DEI programs, which are specifically designed to attract broad underrepresented communities into science, is going to undermine our ability to meet our workforce needs. And then on top of that, to also add visa restrictions, which further limits our ability to recruit internationally, is really going to put a strain on the U.S. Scientific workforce and likely lead to a lack of, or at least a reduced competitiveness on the international stage for the U.S. And then beyond that, especially at the early stages of DOGE, there were the unintended consequences, such as the false positive in keyword searches, where words were either misunderstood or misinterpreted when they were included in a scientific paper. The word diversity in reference to biodiversity perhaps could lead to a grant being canceled when that was not related at all to the DEI programs that the government was targeting. Further, there was the example of transgenic mice perhaps being interpreted as research on transgender studies. And so that's also a problematic issue for science. And what are the impacts of this? Well, in March of this year, we saw that compared to the previous year, we had distributed less than half of the funding through NIH that had been distributed in the previous year. So this would likely have a dramatic impact, not only on the scientists to be able to do their research, but the universities to be able to sustain research, as well as the ability for graduate programs to support graduate students and undergraduate researchers. So these impacts are likely to have long-term effects on the scientific community. And because of that, graduate students are now looking at programs that are being cut. And this is forcing them to look internationally. So overseas universities see an opportunity in the US brain drain. All of these impacts are going to set the US enterprise back. Now, what's the response? We have seen some really aggressive responses. For example, this letter written by National Academy of Science members, not the National Academy officially, but a group of high-profile NAS members, wrote a letter calling on the administration to cease its wholesale assault on U.S. science and urging the public to join the call. There's two actions that are being taken here. The scientific community is stepping forward and engaging the administration, but they're also engaging the public and trying to communicate to them that the cuts and the other changes in the research enterprise are likely to affect them. The final sentence here: we all benefit from science and we all stand to lose if the nation's research enterprise is destroyed. And I think that is on everyone's mind. Sigma Xi as an organization chose to focus first on our members. We're very concerned about the immediate impacts of these changes, these policy changes on our members. We restored a program that we had canceled that was helping with provide mental health support to our members, 24/7 mental health support. And we also reconvened monthly workshops where we talk about our member mental health and the issues that are causing anxiety and stress among our members. We also offered and elevated our jobs platform, trying to promote those who were losing their positions to help them find new roles. And then we wanted to launch informational webinars and more information about the changes that were happening through our newsletters and online formats. We also wanted to engage the administration, so we chose the domain of focusing on policy for science. The arenas that we chose to focus on were specifically the executive branch and White House, directly engaging President Trump. And the mode that we chose was to advocate for science and American prosperity. And initially, our approach was to directly engage the administration with letters and outreach as much as possible, and to encourage our members to directly engage with the administration. We submitted a letter to the White House in March 20 that demanded a plan. We want to understand what this administration has in terms of a vision for the scientific enterprise going forward. We want to understand how they plan to address funding and sustaining federal research agencies, protecting the integrity of scientific research, continuing to invest in research and development, and addressing the impacts creating uncertainty on young researchers. Shortly after we sent the letter, President Trump sent a letter to Michael Kratsios, the Director of Office of Science and Technology Policy. And in that letter, he asked some key questions. How can the U.S. secure its position as the unrivaled world leader in critical and emerging technologies? How can we revitalize America's science and technology enterprise? And how can we ensure the scientific progress and technological innovation fuel economic growth and better the lives of all Americans? We feel these are very appropriate questions. The U.S. is the leader in science in the world in many ways, although that position has been challenged in recent years with China and other countries increasing their investments, as well as China assuming the highest level of publishing as well as the highest level of patenting in the science and technology space. So the U.S. is experiencing serious challenge on these issues, and the answers to these questions are critically important to the nation. And the president also said that he's calling on Michael Kratsios to blaze a trail to the next frontiers of science. We have the opportunity to cement America's global technological leadership and usher in the golden age of American innovation. We're not just competing with other nations, we're seeking, striving, and fighting to make America greater than ever before. I think all scientists can agree with that. And it's just a question of how. How do we influence the process going forward, and how do we ensure that the research enterprise is not negatively impacted through poor policy choices? Sigma Xi, as I said, has other engagement points. We started with the White House, and we've gradually moved into other aspects of the federal government. And then we have to think about the messages we're delivering. In the early days, there was a lot of focus on folks who were losing their jobs, losing their livelihoods, and making a case for why this was negatively affecting that segment of the population. But in terms of policy making, I think that the legislators are more motivated by stories that affect broader constituents, including patients, the negative impacts on research progress and technology development, and the loss of global competitiveness. All of these things all of these stories are likely to have an impact on various legislators and have to be selected very carefully for the audience that you're speaking to. Now, there's a variety of communication opportunities that you can take, whether it's attending Hill visits with scientific societies, including Sigma Xi, calling your elected officials or writing letters. But you would want to think about how you engage each of these and how you're going to engage at the state level. The National Academies is leading the way on some of this response. And in June, President Marcia McNutt presented the State of Science address in 2025, and she had a conversation with Michael Kratsios, director of OSTP, and it was very eye-opening in terms of where the Academy is looking to make the case for science, as well as to hear Michael Kratsios's position on the priorities of the administration, focusing on the gold standards of science, which we really would like to have a very clear definition of as to, so that we're able to assist with this. There's a strong community of scientific societies who are working together to engage this administration, as well as to engage Congress. And I encourage everyone to participate in their discipline-specific societies, as well as general societies like AAAS and Sigma Xi. In the short term, looking ahead, it's critical for us, all scientists, to engage during the August recess with their representatives. And one way to engage a representative is to find them on the Find Your Representative website, enter your zip code, and you will be given all of your representatives during the recess. Visit them, make your case for science, and listen to them and hear what their plans are for science going forward. In the long term, there are continuing changes planned, I believe, for science funding. Many of you are aware of Project 2025 developed by the Heritage Foundation, and this has appeared to be a blueprint for this administration and many of the policies they're implementing. But one key aspect of this document that really stood out for us is this statement, which is, funding for scientific research should not be controlled by a small group of highly paid and unaccountable insiders at NIH, many of whom stay in power for decades. The NIH monopoly on directing research should be broken. Term limits should be imposed on top career leaders at the NIH, and Congress should consider block granting NIH's grants budget to the states to fund their own scientific research. This presents an incredible challenge for scientific research. It likely would affect the quality of science in the US, but it's something we have to take seriously as a potential change in the future, that NIH grants may be sent back to the states. And if it's the case, this is where the rubber meets the road for the state academies. It's likely to present an opportunity at the state level for us to engage with our state legislators on how any funds reapportioned to the states would be used in those states. So that raises this vision for the future of civic scientists, because I would consider all of you interested in science policy as civic scientists working at the state level on science policy. Some things you might want to consider about your state government, and things that Sigma Xi is very aware of North Carolina's government, is when is your legislature in session? North Carolina has a long and a short session, and what's done during those sessions? For North Carolina, the long session is when North Carolina budget is developed. And so you can see here over the years the length of days for the various sessions, and on alternating years, they have a long and a short session. And understanding just this cycle within your state is critical to your effectiveness as someone engaging in science policy. Other things to consider about your state government is, where's the power center in your state government? North Carolina has one of the weakest governors in the nation. The veto power of our governor is incredibly weak. You can see here, the gubernatorial power index ranking puts North Carolina nearly at the bottom for the power of our governor. Although our governor does have a veto, it can be overridden by a 3/5 vote, no line item veto, and doesn't apply to these particular issues. I'm going to pause and look at this chat to see. how much traction has the block grant concept gotten? I can only tell you, Donna, thank you for the question, that John Hardin is the head of the Department of Commerce Office of Science and Innovation in the state of North Carolina. And he has said that the states are looking at this and anticipating that there will be some form of block grants to the states. So North Carolina is preparing for this. Whether it's likely to happen or not is not sure, but we will see. I think the fact that that North Carolina being having a Republican-led legislature and that directive sort of reaching them in the state agencies is an indicator that this is a serious goal. But going back to the North Carolina governor, he's fairly weak, and this is something you should know about your governor if you're planning to engage in policy. Next. You can see how, as the state legislature has become more of a one-party led body, that the number of vetoes have increased dramatically, particularly under Governor Cooper. Another thing you should think about in your state government is, should you always go to your legislator? I think oftentimes we think that the best person to speak to is your legislator, but the reality is oftentimes an issue you're concerned about can be addressed by a committee, a state agency on the executive branch side, or even the governor. There may be other solutions or other pathways to solutions. And so you should understand the structure of your state government and where you can engage. So not only in these official bodies, but also you should look for opportunities in your state on boards and commissions. And Sigma Xi wants to play a key role here, and we would love to partner with NAS on this, of identifying vacant positions in these boards and commissions that are specifically described for scientists. For example, on the Committee for Science, Technology, or the Board for Science, Technology, and Innovation in the state, which has the purpose of advising and making recommendations to the governor and the General Assembly, and Secretary of Commerce, and any North Carolina nonprofit corporation with which the Department of Commerce contracts. The role of science, technology, and innovation in economic growth and development in North Carolina. This seems like a place, a board that a scientist should have a major contribution. And as you can see here, there is an at-large opening on this committee. There's also another position that's open on this board that should be populated by a representative from Duke University and appointed by the university. That position is currently vacant. So identifying scientists at Duke and having them fill in those positions, that position would be another advancement. Another question you should think about is, how professional is your state legislature? Are they paid sufficiently? Are they staffed well? In this case, North Carolina falls short in these areas. And why is this important? Well, it actually might serve as an indicator of their likelihood to accept your services. If they are understaffed, if they are paid insufficiently such that they are not always able to track all of the key issues in the state regarding science, you may be able to advise them efficiently. And so how do you measure the professionalism within a state legislature? You have to look at 3 areas: salary, staff, and session length. Salary is obviously key. Are they paid a salary enough to support them staying in the Capitol? Or do they have to have a part-time job or serve in a part-time role? Are they staffed well? And what's the length of the session? Well, North Carolina's salaries are, I would say, on the lower end. It's $13,951, which is unlikely to sustain a legislator, and therefore, that limits their ability to really commit to the position. And you can see California, Pennsylvania, New York, Michigan, they all pay slightly better. And their legislatures are considered more professional in that capacity. Now, fortunately, to fill some of this gap in various states, There are fellowships that have been developed over recent years, and you can see that the states that have started fellowships are nationwide, and there are a number of states that are also considering or recently established their fellowships. These are opportunities for scientists to actually contribute in the state government. Now in North Carolina, Sigma Xi has stepped into the role to assist the North Carolina STEM Policy Fellowship, and we do this largely by providing a science policy boot camp to those new fellows, as well as any interested Sigma Xi members or scientists who want to learn about North Carolina science policy. And we organize this over a 4-day period. We introduce you to the North Carolina government and then take you through best practices for policy analysis and communication. And this prepares the fellows for their positions, but also anyone interested in engaging in policy, gives them a better understanding of what they're getting into. I'm going to skip this video for time's sake and talk about a vision we have for a state level science policy support network. There's a variety of state academies that have varying degrees of engagement with science policy across the country. Sigma Xi also has a broad range of chapters at various institutions across the country and in these states. We would love for Sigma Xi chapters and the state academies to form partnerships where they can begin to serve as advisors to the state governments on issues of science policy. In addition, there's an incredible network of other organizations that are also operating in a variety of states, and where we can tap into those networks, we would like to leverage that for further impact on state governments, mainly trying to offer the services of interested volunteer scientists to help with informing state level decisions. We want this to function similar to how the National Academy functions for the federal government, providing independent and objective advice to inform policy with evidence, spark progress and innovation, and confront challenging issues for the benefit of society. And this fits very well within the concept of civic science. And so Sigma Xi has understood that there needs to be more educational programs for scientists, and we've identified the process of policy, and we've laid it out in the sense like a metro map, so that you can identify where you would like to engage with this policy process. And you can see here that the map becomes very complicated when you think about all of the various steps in the process of not just identifying a policy, but formulating a policy, usually within the legislature. After formulation, that's usually passed on to the executive branch for implementation. And each of these locations along this metro map, if you will, of the policy process requires a certain skill set. So understanding those challenges, we wanted to break down the policy process and provide training or identify existing training in all of these different areas. So we created a platform we call Civico that is still in development, but is a platform to help you learn about the various opportunities in science policy, and then to give you case studies or examples of individuals who have held these types of positions or done this type of work that you can reach out to through their social media platforms to communicate about your interest in the type of work that they've done. We also want to be able to promote any fellowships or other opportunities for scientists to engage in the policy process. And that brings us to the partnership with the National Association of Academies of Sciences, which is to continue to collaborate on issues related to science policy, but to help develop online webinars and engagement that advances your members, the Academy members, State Academy, as well as Sigma Xi members' role in policy. Some of the things we would like to see discussed includes introducing you to your state government, helping you understand the policy process in your state, engaging policymakers as a science advisor, using evidence in policymaking, understanding science in the legal system, which we haven't spoken about, and then how to specifically conduct policy analysis or communicate your science in a policy context. So now I ask you, how can Sigma Xi engage with your state academy on state level policy? And I welcome you to stay in touch with me. Thank you all.
Wow, thanks, Jamie. You were not kidding about going through those slides really quickly. But it was a lot of slides. I would love, yeah, before we get too far, I do want to just confirm that you will share those with us and we can post them for folks who got a little whiplash going through all that with you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have a few minutes left for questions. If folks want to jump in. I heard a lot of things that resonated with me from just the last hour when I was sitting listening to Dr. Rachel Owen talk to us from AAAS about meeting with policymakers. There are some common themes that you all both talked about. And also just a few days ago on July 25th, we had an Academy chat that touched on a few of these themes too. So point people to both of those for diving a little bit deeper on some of these themes. But anybody have questions, please let us know. Like, what are you working on right now? What would you like to talk about? Andrew.
Yeah, thank you for that. Nice talk, Jamie. I was curious about one point you sort of mentioned in passing that meteorologists are among one of the most trusted scientists. Have y'all put any thought towards like ways of engaging with them? Because I heard that and I was immediately like, oh, like I do astronomy stuff. I'm in a field that's lucky to have a lot of public engagement as a scientific field and we get a bit more trust. Can I like contact my local meteorologist and partner up with them or something like that? Have you given thought to that angle?
Yeah, well, Sigma Xi doesn't officially work with meteorologists, but while I was in the federal government, the U.S. Global Change Research Program has a program that works directly with meteorologists. That's GCRP. They work with meteorologists on how they communicate when they're doing their broadcasts. And they do this because, yes, meteorologists are among the most trusted science communicators in the country because you see them every day. You know that they're giving you information that's relevant to your life and they're trying to keep you safe. And it becomes a very direct way of now communicating about climate change. I don't know if you saw in the media, there was recently a meteorologist who talked about how the cuts to the National Weather Service and the satellites providing meteorology data would likely affect his ability to communicate, accurate forecasts. And that was a huge news story because these meteorologists have such a direct connection to the public. So I would encourage you, if you haven't done so, to reach out to your local meteorologist and see if there's an opportunity for you to talk about communication with the public.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I see Woody has his hands up.
Woody, yes, go ahead.
Yes, hello. In Ohio, we're pretty interested in collaborating with some of the Sigma Xi chapters throughout the state. There's 22 listed on the website. That's a pretty wide-ranging list. It's hard to know the best way to go about contacting them all for future collaborations. Would there be any merit, at least something we were kicking around before this, would there be any merit to identifying like a single best point of contact for each state so that the state academies kind of know who to go to disseminate information?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful. There are some chapters that are more active than others. There are some chapters that primarily focus on STEM education or science communication. But there may be within certain chapters folks who are specifically interested in science policy, and I would love to be able to help you identify those individuals and see what types of relationships we could cultivate there. So feel free to use my email that you can see here. And to get that conversation started, I'll work with our membership and chapters team to help identify folks. We'll do some outreach internally and try to identify some folks who can connect with you.
Okay, thank you so much.
That would be great.
Yeah, I think that really gets at the heart of what we're trying to do here with the collaboration. Yeah, I talked with Mike Wojtek in Ohio earlier today, and I think we're both thinking a lot of the same things in terms of like how we would connect with Sigma Xi members in our states and build capacity for both organizations. So
great.
It is 4 o'clock. If folks have other questions, Jamie, thank you for offering your contact information here. yeah, and if other folks want to continue the conversation or have ideas that came out of this for follow-up sessions, we're still planning topics all the time, responding to what members are interested in. I do want to thank the Gordon and Betty Moore Foundation for a grant that they gave to the National Association this year to do capacity building for our state academies. And they're very interested in particularly building policy capacity to do state policy work. So thanks, Jamie, for helping us with that. And thank you all for tuning in. Hope to see you again at a future event. Please stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.